What's up, Clatter TV Talk fans? Josh Macuga here with a special edition of a little Star Trek Discovery review. Now, this is just for the 2-hour premiere. If you guys like it and there's a huge audience for it, we'll discuss going forward what this show will look like and how we're going to do it. A lot of you know that I'm not a huge Star Trek fan. I am not a diehard like the three people sitting with me here. So I am simply the moderator, and I'm going to let these beautiful people talk about their passion of Star Trek. Let's start with my usual co-host on TV Talk. That's David Griffin.
I'm happy to be here talking about Star Trek again for the second time today. This is great. It's just Star Trek all day.
And one of our fearless leaders, a Star Trekkie herself, Ashley V. Robinson.
Hello. This is my second time here talking about Star Trek because we got to come and talk about Beyond, so this is really exciting.
There you go. And my Arrow brother and cohort, he has never failed this city. That's Jason Inman.
And I will never fail this starship.
All right, let's just get your general overall thoughts on it, and then we'll kind of go into positives, negatives, things you really, really wanted to hit and discuss about the show. Because from what I understand and what David and we kind of talked about on TV Talk, this is a very different Star Trek show. This doesn't feel like most or all of the other Star Trek shows out there. I'll start with you, Jason.
Yes, this feels completely different from most of the Star Trek shows. It has a visual tone that is more similar to the J.J. Abrams movie universe, even though it is not set in that Kelvin timeline. It's set in the Prime universe. I will simply state this. It is the most beautiful Star Trek show by thousands and thousands of miles. The special effects look, I think, better than the Star Trek movies. They look amazing. Yeah. And it does set up some interesting things for the show going forward. But I found myself having problems with how some of the characters acted, specifically some of the Starfleet crew members. And it's a weird problem that I had with this episode, that I understood the Klingons' motivations better than I did the Starfleet officers' motivations. And those were some of the things that knocked me.
Okay. Ashley?
I think as a pilot, it's trying some really, really strong ideas. I appreciate that we start, for example, with a Klingon scene in Klingon. There's no English. We're forced to read subtitles. I think that's a strong choice. I don't know if all the strong choices were the most welcoming to new fans. I think they were great for people like me. I don't know if they're great for people like you or somebody who's maybe never seen anything outside of a Kelvin movie before. I really liked all of the Vulcan stuff, but that's just to my particular taste. I think that the show is really going to get running in episode 3 when we actually get to see the Discovery compared to what we saw in these 2 episodes.
You said that there was a lot in the episode that may not appeal to somebody like me who is a new fan. Could you say why? Like which parts are?
For example, we talk a lot about Klingon mythology and Kahless, and I guess you get the idea that Kahless is basically
I kept seeing Khaleesi.
You're not
Kahless
wrong.
is the Klingon Jesus.
And Kahless is a very important character, and if you've never seen even TNG with Mr. Worf, who's on my t-shirt, then you may not understand why that's important and why that iconography matters and why the 24 houses are important.
Yep.
That's all stuff that's been seeded in the series that we've seen over the last 50 years, and I feel like there could have been more exposition that would have helped out somebody who maybe doesn't know the ins and outs like that.
Because it did feel like in a lot of the dialogue that the exposition was almost forced in there. It was very like shoehorned in certain aspects, kind of like almost like a student film. Like, I haven't seen you in 10 years. It's been 10 years.
Or you didn't know who Sarek was when we were speaking earlier, or what the significance of that character is. And he is a wildly important Vulcan character from the original series. And it would have been great if we could just get a name drop of Spock.
Now, David, we talked about on TV Talk. What are your overall thoughts on the show?
I mean, I think when the trailers came out, we knew this was going to be more like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek universe. It's just with the lens flares and the camera angles and all that. Everything's super, super bright. But I kind of miss the old school Star Trek. So I know it's old-fashioned. I know it's corny. I know it's corny to be like, hey, what are we going to do today? Well, we got a planet over here. We got an asteroid over here. Let's go explore. But I kind of wanted exploration first. This show is war first. It feels more Star Wars than Star Trek. So as a sci-fi action adventure series, I really enjoyed it. But as a Star Trek series, I just couldn't get in that old school Star Trek mode. I think I was telling you I just did a binge recently of Enterprise. You know, that was the one series I hadn't really dived into and actually really enjoyed it, but it still had that old school exploration first feel, and I wanted that from the series. But as an action adventure sci-fi series, it was a lot of fun. It was gorgeous. The action sequences were incredible. I'm definitely going to keep going, keep watching, but it just didn't feel like old school Star Trek to me.
I think that's a very salient point.
Yeah.
You know, when you kind of say that, and when you say exploration, cheesy, slower moving, we don't have that option, I don't think, as the way they've anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we're post Battlestar Galactica, and we're also post Xbox generation, where everyone is expecting everything to be very high octane, and that's not what Star Trek is, which is why sometimes Star Trek movies go either way in their quality. And it'll be interesting to see if we're going to evolve into more of that as the show goes on. There's definitely potential for that.
But that's not to say that type of storytelling is impossible now, because
absolutely.
there is a show that is out there that is doing Star Trek, I think, better than Star Trek, and that is The Expanse.
Okay.
Because
Expanse is incredible,
The
yeah.
Expanse is all about ethics and morals and stuff like that. And I think that's some of the stuff that I really hope Star Trek Discovery starts pulling in more, because you are right. This is the battle, war, let's blow up the Klingons episodes. And I kind of hope we get into these moral quandaries of this war and what this means, because one of the scenes, there's a gentleman in it who says, like, hey, we're supposed to be explorers. What are we doing? The guy with the grievous head wound.
Yeah. I did
Connor,
catch that.
Ensign
Yeah.
Connor,
I mean,
Lieutenant
yeah.
Connor, the
Yeah,
cute
yeah.
guy who got blown up.
When you think about the Star Trek, I mean, there's a whole, one of my favorite movies is a whole movie about saving humpback whales.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no war. It's just, let's find the nuclear vessels in Alameda and let's get the humpback whales. And that's all it is. I mean, that's what, for me, Star Trek is. Yes, there's battles. There's large scale battles. There's the Romulans, there's the Klingons, there's the Borg. But I don't know, it always felt very personal. This didn't feel as personal to me. It felt more like big scope, like space opera.
And I think a problem with that maybe is that we know, especially from the trailer that they showed us at the end of episode 2, we know that most of these main characters are not going to be in the season going forward.
But we even knew that from the
Spoiler
opening
alert.
credits.
Yeah.
You know, where was Jason Isaacs, who was credited? Where was Anthony Rapp, who was
Where
credited?
was the Discovery
Well,
that we didn't even see in the first 2 episodes?
did not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't even show up to Deus Ex Machina, a rescue at the end.
Yeah.
Is there a point in the show that really kind of sold you going forward, or are you still a little skeptical as we're sitting here?
I'll go first. I think we're all healthily skeptical because it is only 2 episodes, and we do know the status quo is about to shift drastically going forward. There were 2 moments for me. One was the first time we saw Sarek, because I love Vulcans. I love Sarek as a character. I love James Frain as an actor. And for me, he really harkened back to, I think, what you were talking about, some of the old school ethics and the things that we're used to seeing in Star Trek. So, like, I'm showing up just for him, if nothing else. And the scene where Michael Burnham comes across the Vulcan ship that becomes the beacon for the first time, and I loved the way she was speaking about it like it was a piece of art, like this was exciting, like it was something that was worth exploring. And Jason brought this up when we were talking about it last night, that's because it's her being a scientist, and that's what we expect from this. And those 2 moments that were beautiful and nuanced and unlike anything we'd seen before, but harken back to the tone, were the things that I'm hoping for more of going forward, and I thought were tremendously done in this episode.
Dave?
I like the spectacle. I get sucked in by big space battles, even though I can look at it and be like, that's not really the Star Trek that I remember growing up as a kid watching Next Generation with my dad. But I got sucked in by it. It's beautiful. I love seeing the binary star system. I want that as a wallpaper on my
That was
computer
really
screen.
cool.
It was just
Yeah.
gorgeous. I mean, I think I heard it's like somewhere between 8 to 8.5 million per episode. I mean, that's a big budget.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we were worried because the talk was so bad about the show. It's always going to be a train wreck. And while it had flaws, I don't think it was a train wreck. I've seen worse pilots.
I agree
Definitely
with you.
seen worse
Yeah.
pilots.
It was
Yeah.
nowhere
Yeah.
by any means a train wreck, or even the worst Trek pilot. By,
Oh, definitely not.
Not even close. Yeah.
Sorry.
But it comes in.
That's the first time David Griffin has sneezed on camera. I've been waiting my entire career here at Collider for people to hear the sneeze. That's the sneeze. It is incredible. I'm
Sorry
sorry.
about
Sorry to break up the Star Trek discussion, but the world needed to hear it.
To jump back in though, but this pilot comes in with a huge legacy behind it, and we all
Yeah.
come in with this baggage,
Yeah.
which is why we can look at it and say, oh, but this and this and this and this and
And
this.
I just have the J.J. Abrams carry-on. Like you guys have
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
check
Yeah.
bags and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing that kind of sold me on this a little bit was, is it Tecumva or Tekuvma?
Tekuvma.
Tekuvma.
God bless Chris Obi for working
Yeah.
under that makeup.
Yeah.
Tekuvma really, I thought, put on the shoes of the Klingon legacy of Star Trek. There are many great Klingon characters. There's Worf, there's Martok, there's Galron, there's all these other guys. And when in the second episode is really where he shined, where he was talking to all the other Klingon houses and stuff like that, and they shined the beacon, and that again was a nice old school reference to Kalas, their Klingon Jesus, because he talks about when he's going to come back on a giant shining light. We actually see that happen in the Next Generation. So he did that, and he activated this thing, and you're like, oh, this is this guy's power play to become the head of the Klingons. This is Genghis Khan in space, and I think that's also a little bit why I was a little bit disappointed that he died, because I was like, he's such a great character.
Yeah.
Don't get rid of him.
Yeah.
I mean, they talked about it, and the foreshadowing of, well, if you kill him, they're going to make him a martyr. Well, like, no shit. If 2 people go in there, they're
And then he
gonna
became a
kill
martyr.
him and
Yeah.
make him a martyr. You could have seen that coming. I appreciate like the undertones of somebody being different in the color of their skin based on
Yeah, that was
whatever.
interesting,
I'm
right?
really hoping
Yeah.
that character becomes really important. I
What
thought
a
he
name.
was so
I-
cool.
Son of no one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I actually
love
thought that
yeah.
was the closest the episode got to classic Star Trek, was
Okay.
that telling that parallel of that this guy, because he was an albino Klingon, didn't mean he was any less important, and because he like stood up to Tecumseh and was like, "Hey, I'm like,
I
I'll
will
do
burn
it."
my prosthetic
Tecumseh.
hand.
Yeah,
Tecumseh,
right,
I
yeah.
will burn my hand. Tecumseh.
We're gonna get it wrong.
These
Sorry.
Klingon names are impossible.
They're tough.
I'm not fluent in Klingon myself, so I
Yeah, he stood up to his leader, and his leader gave him value. And I was like, oh, this is the closest we've gotten to the Star Trek moral lesson.
Yeah.
Right.
Ironically, coming from the Klingons.
From
of
the
all
Klingons.
people.
Yeah.
Not exactly the most accepting traditionally.
Here's the thing for me, and listen, for me, you turned me on to The Expanse. I love The Expanse. Never been a huge sci-fi, space kind of operatic guy when it comes to these kind of adventures. But when you guys talk about Star Trek being exploratory and that kind of stuff, do you think that if they had gone that route and made it a little bit slower of a pilot and impetus towards something that was a little more Star Trek-y, you would have liked it more? Or is it because we're in this version of a J.J. Abrams world where we're expecting to see Star Trek be more of a space battle that...
Well, I'll just say this. I think just because you do something like that doesn't mean that the pace is slower. And I don't think that it means that the pace has to be slower to tell that type of story. I still think you can have a fast-paced story with that. My biggest problem with this pilot, and it's not the fact that it looks different, it's not the fact that there's a space battle, it's not the fact that it's more J.J. Abrams' universe. I think that's a good thing because it's like, no, those tones have worked for millions of people. So of course, let's put that same tone on this show that less people are going to see. My main problem is that the main character, Michael Burnham, is supposed to be this human raised by Vulcans. She's supposed to be very logical. We see a flashback with her where she's like a robot, very small. Like
very small.
Very small, right?
Yeah.
And 7 years later, she comes off as the most irrational person I have ever seen and makes leaps of logic to be like, Captain, we need to fire on them. We need to fire on them right now,
It's
Captain.
like, when we were talking on TV Talk, it's like jailhouse rules. It's like
Yeah.
you go and you beat up somebody.
Yeah.
But also, just from a psychological standpoint, if you spent your formative years being raised in a certain way, you can't undo all that conditioning and become a fully functioning, emotional, irrational human being in 7 years.
Right.
Like the leaps that they take from Sarek finds her, we don't really explain what happened or what happened to her parents, although we figure that they die or why she didn't go back with Starfleet. And then to jump to she's the robot who's going to skip over Starfleet Academy to become the first officer to where she is committing mutiny. Like there's a lot of leaps in the character that aren't earned.
Justified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarek was
yeah.
more believable because Sarek's always been the guy who's more Vulcan than Spock, than his son, but yet you know he cares. Like that part when
Yes.
looks like she's dead as a little girl, and you can see the emotion on his face. He's like, "Come back to me!" Like he really does care about her, even though he says, "Like, what do you think this is like a courtesy call?" Or I was just like wanted to check in with you emotionally,
Yeah.
but
He can't tell her that
does
he
care.
loves her.
He does care.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so we have that relationship. We have. Did you guys think that the one thing that kind of struck me as an outsider watching the final scene with the captain and her with the gun and everything like that, it happened so quick.
Did you see how she changed it though, from blue to red?
Yeah.
Did you notice the gun?
I don't know what that means.
So blue is like stun, red's to kill.
Which is also a thing
I
from the
wanna
J.J. Abrams
vaporize
movies.
you.
Yeah.
Vaporize
Yeah.
you.
Gotcha.
In the JJ
Okay.
verse, it flips.
It flips. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kill shot.
So, but going straight to the Vulcan neck pinch
Yeah.
in order to do this with such a quick exchange, that almost took me out of it a little bit. Dude.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I was more impressed that Michelle Yeoh's character got over the Vulcan neck pinch in like
Yeah.
less than 2 minutes. I think
Is
than
that not
anything else.
happen?
It's traditionally something that will put you down. Spock takes out a horse with that in one of the
Yeah.
movies.
But I will think I think that's a plot reason because they have said in several series that the Vulcan nerve pinch is almost impossible for non-Vulcans to learn. So I'm gonna guess that human Michael Burnham didn't quite do it correctly, or did a light touch.
Vulcans are also about 7 to 10 times stronger than humans. They're stronger than Klingons even. So if you're a human, maybe you don't have the strength.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah.
But I think you make a really good point that her character flips on this woman who's supposed to be her mother figure very, very quickly. And that might be for, this pilot doesn't stop. And it might be for the sake of, we got to get to the next scene, guys, where she's on the bridge yelling at Doug Jones.
It's very...
Well, that's the thing I was going to say, too, is like, I feel the mutiny was more motivated by, we need Burnham to be this sort of enemy antagonist character in the Federation for the rest of the season, more than by character motivation.
It felt rushed because I think, I hate to mention Game of Thrones because even that started, slow. It wasn't a huge hit when it first came out. It's rushing now, but when it first started, those first 5 or 6 episodes, it's all exposition. But you kind of need that. And I think you can balance that. I think it needed a little more balance, a little more exposition, and a little less blowing everything up.
Do you think that because we've had 5 or 6 Star Trek series and all these movies that there just isn't the time for the exposition, or they just don't want to do it, or the audience, because again, they're jonesing for a new audience.
Sure.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Sorry, Doug Jones. But they're pining for this. Chris Pine. Jesus, can I just not?
Knock on wood.
Where's the Nimoy reference?
Oh man, I don't have one in me. I need more of this.
That
But
was a good try.
do you think that because we've had all of these series of expositions that they're like, well, if they've watched Star Trek, they're going to get it, or that they are like they're going to sprinkle in the exposition as the show goes on?
I don't know.
or-
See, that is a very interesting point, because there are some points in this show where they do that, where they're like,
And they do it well.
You've seen Star Trek, whatever.
Right.
They don't tell us a lot about the Vulcans. They don't tell us a lot about the Klingons. They don't even tell us that the phasers do that blue and red. We just know that because of the movies. And that'll be an interesting thing again to see, because I really look at these 2 episodes like, since the show is going to diverge so wildly, I think, because we're actually going to get to Discovery, we're going to get Captain Lorca in the 3rd episode, could we have told everything in these 2 episodes over flashbacks in the next episode?
I would agree with that.
Again, I liked it, but there were points where I was like, you could have jammed this 2 hours into one.
Yeah.
Or even had kind of, one of my favorite things in movies and TVs is origin stories. I love origin stories. I love seeing where people come. Man of Steel, I love the Russell Crowe Krypton origin story kind of situation. So for me, I would have loved to have seen a little more, maybe like the first 15 minutes is Sonequa Martin Green, but as the child with the Vulcans,
too.
how her parents
That's a
were
good idea.
killed.
Yep.
It's the impetus of the 15-minute origin story or whatever, and then we get to her as this person.
Yep.
So we're already on board, instead of them walking on a desert planet and then walking in a circle and a thing coming down and beaming them up. That does nothing for me. I know it does something for Star Trek fans, but it did nothing for me.
Not really.
Okay.
That was
Also-
a heck of a drawing something in the sand. That was crazy that she could do it. I'm
That
like,
was
could you really do that?
ridiculous. It was cool for the
It was
pullout,
cool, yeah,
but,
it looked cool,
but
yeah.
this is a show and this is a franchise that comes out of storytelling from 50 years ago, and I think because Deep Space Nine is really the beginning of overarching narrative plot on TV. Everyone likes to credit Lost, and Lost definitely was another step beyond that. But Deep Space Nine kind of did that first, and I think this is trying to do another shift in television storytelling, and we don't know what it is yet. And I think we're watching a mostly successful take on that. And again, I'm hoping that moving forward, it'll get better. And also, traditionally, Star Trek first seasons are a mixed
Very
bag.
rocky.
Okay.
So this
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
might really find its footing toward the end, and then the 2nd season is where it really takes off.
And let's hope CBS lets that.
It's already greenlit for a second,
believe it is,
second
yeah.
season. So
Did not know.
yeah.
I'd be curious to see what these numbers are on All Access, just out of curiosity.
If they release them,
Yeah,
because
they probably-
Netflix
Yeah,
doesn't
right,
release their
they probably
numbers.
will,
At the
yeah.
end of the
Notice
day,
a little
it's a really good thing that we're talking about a new Star Trek show. It's a good thing that there's a Star Trek
Yes.
show back on the air. It has a lot of great things in it. It just it has a lot of problems. Some of the problems are big, but this could have been, for a show that's been off the air for 15 years, way worse. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
happy with what we
Yeah.
got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good start.
And again, like you said, Star Trek pilots are bad. Traditionally, pilots can sometimes be really bad.
Traditionally, pilots are
Yeah,
completely
the
a
worst
wash.
episode, and we're gonna have the Walking Dead kind of scenario of 8 episodes and then 7 episodes. Are gonna take a break in that winter Christmas time. Is there anything you guys want to hit on before we take off that you really liked or you didn't like, or something that you're looking forward to going forward? For me, I love the trailers of what this show is going to look like in the next few episodes. I'm looking forward to Jason Isaacs. I'm looking forward to the actual discovery, more so than what the war is going to look like, and more so of where all these characters go, because I didn't think in this pilot we got enough character build, and I would have liked to seen a little more character build. I know that it sounds lame and slow, but you need characters. You need to love the characters so that when they die in a battle, you care,
Yeah.
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 right?
I agree with you completely. I am looking forward to seeing what Jason Isaacs does, especially since they've sort of been hinting that he might be an evil captain, like which is something that Star Trek the original series did a lot. You always met like the evil captain.
Evil Admiral.
Star Trek Beyond even did it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see like what that, and Discovery. I'm interested to see like what's the deal with that ship because there seems to be like a mystery. But yeah, another problem that I had with this pilot is that I thought there were some kinks in the editing. Especially any of the fights. There's the fights at the end with Takuvma and the Klingon.
You got it there.
Thank you. And the Klingon on the object. I thought the editing really made it unclear what was going on with the fights. And again, I think,
don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
It happens very fast, and the editing is really so much so. And it, honestly, what it may be is makeup, because there's
also
a lot.
maybe fight choreography.
Yeah.
You actually got to give credit to shows. I know off subject, but we cover the DC shows. I mean, that's always appreciate Arrow. For the budget and what they have to do in a quick time, I think they have very good fight choreography.
And you can see the
fights
And you
very
can tell,
well.
I'm like, that's a
Yeah.
good fight choreography.
But they're also not dealing with
of
an
course,
entire
right, of course.
Klingon
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
prosthetic.
different, right?
Yeah. With the big blades and everything.
Yeah,
It's hard
yeah.
to move. You
Those
can
blades
tell.
are cool though.
Yeah.
The new Batless?
Yeah, because I mean,
Or
Worf's
the old
Worf's
Batless?
look cool, but it was just kind of basic. This thing is elaborate, very ornamental. It was really nice.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a story about it's supposed to be one piece now because the old Batless people used to always their wrists would knock forward because they were so heavy and they were really hard to hold up.
Okay.
So that's why they've
Oh.
simplified them. But I'm looking forward to seeing more Klingon stuff because I'm not a huge Klingon fan, and I think this version of their history and their mythology is really, really interesting. And then I'm 100% on board for anything else with Sarek. Please, more Vulcans.
Sarek.
Yeah.
She's a Vulcan fan. David?
I'm with her, more Sarek, and I can't wait to see more about the Klingons. They seem a little more eloquent in this time. They seem very more Shakespearean, poetic, the way they speak. It's very profound. Because they're very old. They're a very old civilization. I want to learn more about this iteration of the Klingons.
To be honest with you, in a couple shows we've watched recently, I don't have any sympathy or empathy for the villain, and in this one, I definitely have a little bit of sympathy and empathy for the villain. I think it's the way that they wrote these scenes with the Klingon and the way they're putting this whole thing together. You feel for them. You see what the race is about, and like you said, that point of it, that character build was actually really well done.
And that's the thing. That's probably again might be my biggest problem with the pilot. I think I emphasize more with the Klingons than I do with the Starfleet people.
Okay. Real quick, you posted something on Facebook yesterday that was like something 10 years in the future that
yes.
we're retired.
Yes.
Can you explain that to me so I don't look like an idiot?
All right, so on Twitter, I posted this where I posted the view screen from the original series on Twitter, and then I also posted because in this episode they had a lot of holograms walking around on their bridge. Like the Admiral, it was like you and me talking
Like
like
leaning
right
up
here.
against the desk. Like,
Yeah.
It was amazing, and he knew where everything was. He didn't walk through a console.
So this is set in the Prime universe.
Okay.
They've stated that several times. It's canon that holograms do not exist in the time of James T. Kirk. And this show is set 10 years before Kirk.
The same year as The Cage, the original Star Trek pilot, which means Spock is out there.
Spock is on the Enterprise right now around, and somewhere around, and Lieutenant Kirk is somewhere around there, and all the characters that from the original series are out there.
Okay.
So for me, I was like, I'll give you. I actually love the new design of the Klingons. I think that was a great choice to update it, and I'll give you breaks and bends in continuity because of art direction. Like, yes, it looks more like the J.J. Abrams movies, but there are certain things where I'm like, that's the one I'm not going to give you. Like, use the damn view screen because we know for a fact that holograms don't exist 10 years later.
And it's an easier view screen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
it canon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see where you're going with that. Thanks for the
that
explanation.
was me putting up the
Yes.
nerd glasses, being like, "This is my Star Trek fan."
like, excuse me.
It was that, and the Klingons don't have a cloaking device yet. They don't get them until TOS. It's a plot point.
Yep.
But Captain, she can't fire when she's cloaked. This one can.
Yeah, these were a couple moments of us being like, well, in my Star Trek encyclopedia.
And I'm over here just hanging out. Honestly, I was impressed by the pilot because of all the things we had. So, and I want to thank you guys for being here. If you guys really like the show and you want us to keep doing it, just let us know, and we will tackle whatever you tell us to tackle in the Star Trek world. I want to thank Jason, Ashley, David for being here. Before we get out of here, where can the good people find you on the internet? Jason Inman.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Jawin, Jawiin.
Ashley V. Robinson.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. And in December, pick up Jupiter Jet in comic book stores. Jason and I wrote it.
I will say, of all the pictures and all the things you guys put, it looks unbelievably impressive.
Thanks,
I can't
man.
wait to
Thank
read.
you.
Yeah, I can't wait. David Griffin.
I'll be on TV Talk tomorrow with this handsome man over here, Josh Macuga, and on Twitter and Instagram at GriffinDE.
I'm Josh Macuga on Twitter and Instagram, The Josh Macuga Show on YouTube. Check out Collider TV Talk, 11 a.m. PST every single day. If you want us to do more Star Trek, just let us know and we will make things happen. As always, put down the book, pick up the remote. Hey everybody, Josh Macuga here. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Collider TV Talk. Want to watch more episodes? Click there. It's an interactive link. Or for more Collider content, click down there. Subscribe to the channel. Tell all your friends. Get an airplane. Drive it by that says Collider. I'm not telling you to buy an airplane. Just do whatever you want as long as you're watching Collider videos.